So here we are in mid-afternoon. Chances are you've already been on Facebook a few times. You've already talked to your coworkers, and I would bet that at some point during the day, given all the events that are happening in Washington, the topic of politics came up. So the question becomes, how much does that happen, and how much does it take it away from what we're supposed to be doing at work? Maybe not that we care, but perhaps our employer does. Jim Whidden tracks these things as a consultant at the oldschooladvantage.com. And Jim, is you consult with companies. Do we know how much the current political environment has taken away from productivity at work?
It's interesting, Guy. Thanks for having me on. I'm not sure we know for sure. The 29% cited in the study seems really high to me, but that still highlights the idea that there's a social media distraction in general that may be an even deeper problem. So I'm thinking maybe of some subtle ways to redirect if there is a problem of too many political discussions or checking social media about these topics in the workplace. And I'd be happy to offer those to you.
So let me run down the statistics of the survey.
Okay.
This came from BetterWorks, trying to assess how much political talk may distract us. And they surveyed 500 U.S. adults that are employed full-time. 87% said they are reading political social media posts during the workday at their employer's workplace. We read an average of 14 political posts per day. That's 18 for millennials. Some read 21%, say they read 20 or more. 73% talked with their colleagues about politics sometime during the day. 37% have talked politics with their boss or manager. Holy cow, Jim. So when are we getting anything done?
Well, it's interesting that the millennials are so interested. I find that a little surprising, but in some ways a positive thing. But the way to get things done, I think if I am an employer, I want to try to redirect without insulting. I mean, you have to balance the, First Amendment right of free speech with the idea that when someone's working for me, I pretty much own their time because I'm paying them for their time. And so how do you balance that? And I'm going to suggest that they go back to some old school time management, or what we call time leadership techniques. And so let me just give you one of those. There's nothing wrong with checking those things. In fact, other studies say an occasional social media breather can help productivity. So what we're talking about, are they going too far? Well, encourage time block activity. And what I mean by that, if they've got an hour to work on a project, concentrate for 50 minutes, but put away the devices and the distractions. And then at the end of 50 minutes, check all those things. In other words, at least be methodical about it so that you can stay informed but also be more efficient in your work. So that's one example. Another one might be to implement what I call a traffic light system. Green time is in front of clients or trying to get new clients or customers. Yellow time is administrative, and red time is wasted. So I think what you're describing would firmly be in the wasted time category. Just have your people chart what they're doing for 2 weeks, and you'll see, I think, some of this magically go away because it will refocus them on understanding what they're supposed to be doing
right
during working hours. So just being indirect, firm, but sending a message that says there's nothing wrong with these things. We want you to be great Americans and be informed, but don't do it at the expense of our customers.
Well, and Jim, there's the other part of it. We not only want the workplace to be productive, we also want it to be happy. And we know that we've never seen polarization the way it is right now. And that's one of the things this study points out, is that nearly 50% say they've witnessed what started out as a sociable political conversation turn into an argument. So how do we referee that?
Well, there's no question that we're in a time where classic argumentation, in other words, being able to sit down and have a civil discussion about these matters, it's waning. And in that case, I would point you to Chapter 4 of my book, The Old School Advantage, which literally goes back thousands of years to the Greek, to Socrates and finding truth and discussing these matters through listening. That's what our mom and grandmom told us, right? Listening is the best conversation skill. And then how to ask great questions. I mean, if we want to really arrive at the truth of a matter, or, how things are, it doesn't mean we're going to come to an agreement in that discussion, but just maybe a refresher on civil discourse. which has really been lost in this cycle more than any other, at least in my lifetime, could also be a helpful tip or a helpful exercise to go through with employees, just to remind them that, we're all human beings. We have foibles. We're raised different ways. We have different opinions, but that doesn't mean we can't get along and even improve each other's lives through these discussions.
Because some of this discourse could actually be a positive thing if it leads to greater understanding between employees. You've got greater team building. It could actually work to your advantage, couldn't it?
That's exactly right. You want to jujitsu these volatile times into something positive. And again, I think that starts with just a refresher on what does it mean to sit down and talk about things. It's not complicated, but
it's easier said than done. So what's the one key takeaway here that we need to maybe boost civility, whether it's at home, if we're in a mixed political marriage, or if it's at the workplace?
I would say be quick to hear and slow to speak. We were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And again, I sound like my mother. But in times like these, it just doesn't hurt to be reminded of that. And so listening, if there's one thing, listen and ask questions.
And the other rule that I always try to abide by, Jim, and that's it. Treat it like you would an honest-to-goodness prize fight. No shots below the belt.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I like that. That's a good one.
Don't make it personal. Don't insult. Try to have a reasonable conversation and no low blows.
There you go.
All right. Well, Jim Whitten, the book is called The Old School Advantage, and, there's no school like an old school. I think that brings us back to a time when we had a little bit more common sense, and I think that's something we could all embrace.
Exactly. You got it, Guy. Thank you so much for having me on.
Great to have you on, Jim Whitten.